Today, I want to share with you the story of why I choose to make my business unabashedly Catholic and some things for you to consider if you are feeling the same draw. That's what's coming up today on the Possibility Mom Live. We're going to start this episode with a little bit of a story. And I've given myself some visual prompts here because it's an involved one. So I've given myself some prompts. If you're watching this on YouTube, I've given myself some prompts so that you can follow along and so that I keep this on track, because there are many, many tangents that this story can take me. So I'm going to attempt to keep it concise. And we're just going to begin with a little bit of the story. I've been an entrepreneur basically since the age of like 6 years old. Okay, so more seriously, like I can remember some of the first things I did to make money. I did a lot of that stuff with plastic string where you tie it and make it into bracelets, tied it around pens. Oh my word. I feel like I've always been in business. I sold Regal products, for those of you who might remember. I have done I did Mary Kay for many years. Of course, Beauty Counter. Beauty Counter sale PS is still on. And so I have been an entrepreneur essentially more seriously, like more full time, for basically my business. And I would say for most 10 years, I was a interior designer as well as a production designer. I made the transition, and that's to recognize, oh wow, this woman has so many children. We could probably work with her. I did some really fun campaigning, made a lot of content for a lot of brands. So all of this while just remaining very accessible. I was not shy about my faith. You certainly knew I was Catholic. I mean, I have so many children that a lot of people would intimate that there was, a religious influence there. And I was not shy about it. It's not like I would hide it, but I definitely wasn't leading with it. It definitely wasn't on my website. There was no stitch of, I'm a Catholic, I love God, nothing like that. I would very rarely talk about religious or political things on social media. Like there was enough sort of to understand, yeah, this is a woman of faith, but not anything blatant. I was also in a lot of secular business coaching groups, lots of them. I have invested a tremendous amount in my particularly online business journey. And I was in a ton of these groups. And that influenced my thinking, I would say, for many, many years. I made this transition from being an interior designer to getting into more lifestyle content, talking more about motherhood, which eventually led to me writing my book, The Possibility Mom, which then took me on a book tour. I was on the Today Show. I was on Hallmark Home and Family. Very fortunate to be on several different major outlets, New York Times. And I kind of could see, okay, here's a career as a speaker, as an author, like there's a trajectory ahead. And then couple this with the fact that I really wanted to move my family to Ave Maria, Florida. I eventually made the transition to stopping interior design and launching into more speaking and content, like just that type of lifestyle, professional and personal development content. And I moved to Ave Maria, Florida, where we lived for several years, with the intention to launch a speaking career. And I was going to launch a speaking career with a conference. And I will never forget. I had my credit card out and I had selected a conference center in Southwest Florida. It was actually Southeast Florida. I had picked an event space. If I'm not mistaken, I had picked an event space on the east side. And I was ready to put down a big deposit in order to go. And I remember like to start promoting the event. And I just remember I had this weird nagging feeling, which I now know was the Lord's telling me, halt. And then COVID happened like immediately after. And so I'm very, very grateful that I never pulled the trigger on that large event at that time. And instead, like so many other people, pivoted to things like online summits. And for me personally, I pivoted to coaching. So this is what sort of jump started my coaching practice. And I coached in the very beginning. I'll never forget. I signed the agreement with the women's school, January Donovan, to use her content as part of my coaching materials on my husband's birthday. I remember January 17, 2020 was my actual day. That's my anniversary with the women's school. So I started a coaching practice. I remember in the very beginning, it was one-on-one coaching. And I had this incredible group of 10 women who agreed to pay me $19.97. And that got them one-on-one coaching and then got them an experience in a group as well as part of the women's school. And the very interesting thing that I noticed, and again, at this time, I was not marketing myself as Catholic. I was not on my website, on my social media. There was not like a stitch of, my Catholic faith is front and center. It was there. It was apparent, but it was not like you couldn't find it on my website at that time. But the thing I found really interesting was that 90% of the people who chose to give me $19.97 in the height of the pandemic, so not an insignificant amount of money at a time when there was a lot of instability, 90% of those people were devout Catholics. And I remember I think it was my husband's prompting that had me ask this question to my people. He was like, go and ask them how important it was to them that you were Catholic. And so I went to all these women. I'm forever grateful for this first group that stuck with me, that invested in me during the pandemic. I asked them the question, and they all said it was the reason. And I'll just give a little nod to some of these women. You know who you are: Crystal, Lydia, Beverly. You three come to mind immediately. I asked you this question, and you all said it was the reason. I wanted to be coached by somebody who I knew was in line with my worldview and my values. All these women also had small children. Lydia, particularly, I think, had maybe just as large a family as mine at that time. And so that was such an interesting thing for me to observe. It was the reason they signed up to coach with me. So pandemic is happening. I was spending all of my time on Zoom, like back to back. I remember I got so good at knowing what 5 minutes felt like. So meaning like I could just sit in my chair without looking at my clock, knowing I had just 5 minutes to the next client. And I could just like take a little breath and be like, okay, I know exactly, my day was that back to back where it was just, there was not a lot of I just was coaching back to back to back to back with these very, very short little 5-minute breaks in between. And the pandemic was happening. Of course, I lived in the land of the free in Florida. And so we were never really all that close. And I'll never forget, I met Erin Ingold. Erin Ingold, co-founder with her husband, Matt, of Metanoia Catholic, hugely influential in my life, dearest friends. I'm standing in front of the church in Ave Maria, Florida. So there's like a beautiful town circle, right? It's a circle. And right in front of the church, there is quite a bit of space to, socialize. And you often have to cross the front of the church Like people often use that as like the through fare to get to the other side where all the shops are. And I was standing there and I see this woman who I did not recognize. I knew she was new to town and she had hair as high as heaven. I just remember being like, who is that girl? I need to be friends with her because you don't always see people in Ave Maria, at least at that time. It was not that common to see somebody as beautifully, like just like done up, like full hair. She had eyelash extensions, beautiful eyelashes. Many women in Ave Maria and in Florida in general just are, a little bit more relaxed, let's call it, in the way that they dress. Erin Ingold was ready for the day. And I just remember being like, she and I are going to be friends. And so here she comes, this like petite woman, like 5 foot tall, but her hair made her like 5'6". And she's just like bopping along. And I finally got to meet her and we, developed this friendship. And she told me about this thing that her and her husband were doing, Metanoia Catholic. I was like, Metanoia what? Like I couldn't pronounce Metanoia. But I decided to sign up for something that they called the Purgative Way. And Purgative Way ended up evolving into what is now their certification. But that was their signature flagship program. I believe I was the second cohort to go through Purgative Way. And it was a beautiful, like maybe 4 month, 6 month experience. Like it was extensive training and extensive coach training. So both those things, like training for understanding what it looks like to coach in a Catholic manner, and also extensive coach training, just practical, how do you coach someone? And essentially what they did was she combined her sort of her knowledge of coaching. She had received a certification from a large secular institution, and she combined her training as a theology student at Franciscan University, her husband's training as a spiritual director. They matched all these things up together to provide a authentically Catholic experience for both coaching and personal development. And I remember, because remember what I shared earlier, I was in all kinds of secular coaching experiences, secular business groups. And I just remember being like, this is different. I remember feeling how free I felt to just be able to speak my faith and not feel weird, or speak my faith and not feel like all these people were going to judge me or look at me different or gang up on me. Like I had observed some wackadoodle things in some of the secular groups where even just like infighting between Protestants and Catholics in some of these groups, and just bananas. Like it just felt so good to be with people who I knew understood exactly what it meant to be Catholic and cared about doing this in a way that's completely in line with a Catholic anthropology, meaning what it means to be a Catholic, like what it means to do things as a Catholic. It is different. The way we are going to see the world with a Catholic anthropology, I keep using this word, it's a good one, is going to be different than someone else's. I remember when I was in many of the secular groups, it was very challenging for me because there was a lot of mental gymnastics. There were things that would happen in these groups where I would be like, am I allowed to think this as a Catholic? We're talking there's a lot of manifesting and energy and woo-woo, like just woo-woo stuff. And I remember being like, I don't know what's what here. Like, I don't know. It took a lot of work. It was a lot of mental gymnastics to take the good from these groups, but then filter out the rest. And it just felt like this enormous weight had been lifted, that I could be in a community where I could truly be myself and trust, just like my clients came to me with that intention. I could trust that what I was receiving was going to be in line with Catholic Church teaching. And for many different reasons, so both the material that we're talking about, but also the model, the example of Matt and Erin running their business in this authentic Catholic way, I couldn't unsee what I saw. And I could feel this tug. And I remember getting coached on it with Aaron. I remember just wrestling and grappling. Like it was very challenging for me because I felt like if I branded myself Catholic, that somehow that was going to be like a target on my back. I felt like if I branded myself Catholic, I was going to cut off an entire portion of the marketplace who would want to work with me. I thought it was gonna completely limit my ability to make money. I thought many things were going to be negative. Like it was going to be a negative outcome if I niched Catholic. And I'm here to tell you, we're going to get to a little later, but the opposite was completely true. And so, what I decided to do after a lot of prayer, a lot of discernment, a lot of coaching, I was so nervous. I will never forget how nervous I was for this webinar. I announced these changes, and this is after doing rounds and rounds and rounds of the women's school. I had probably taken 60 women through the women's school, not leading with my Catholic faith. So I had all kinds of women in there. And this webinar, I remember having so much trepidation. I remember feeling so just like, am I doing the right thing? But I remember at the end of the webinar, I remember Erin, she either texted or called me or whatever. And she just like, how do you feel? And I was like, I think that is the most important webinar of my life to date and the best webinar I've ever given. And it's for all the reasons that we've described, but I want to share a couple, like why this change was important to me. The first reason why this change was so important to me was that it just allowed me to be authentic. That mental gymnastics, that self-editing, that can I say this? Can I say that? How will this be received if I say it? You know, will this come across as weird? All of that was gone. When you can just say, like, I am Catholic and this is what it means to be Catholic, and there are things that are going to be in line with the Catholic worldview and things that are not, and you get to decide if you want to come here, come on this train or not. Freedom is up to you. It allowed me to just be myself. It allowed me to pray at the beginning of meetings. It allowed me to feel very safe in the container I had created for myself. It allowed me to just speak truth with so much joy and so much like just unabashed Lisa Canningness, you know, like I just was allowed to be myself, and that felt so good. And that continues to remain true today. I remember feeling so like on different things I would present on, I would sort of tiptoe and be like, I don't know if there are other people here who are like, you know, women of faith like I am, you know, and I still do that now. I will still boldly speak my faith, but like I never knew if it was allowed. Now, in the container that I've created, coaching specifically Catholics, it's allowed. Like I've created it, and it allows me to be my most authentic self. And anybody who wants to receive it, you know, you get to you get to bear the brunt of my authenticity. So number one, why it was important to me, why it's still very important to me to choose to make my business unabashedly Catholic, is that it allows me to be authentic. Number two, and this is a really important one, and it's a delicate one, so I am going to treat this very delicately. It has made it easier to navigate moral conflicts. And what do I mean by that? There have been several instances in my coaching career where someone has brought me something that is completely against Catholic Church teaching. So whether that be, you know, bioethics, gender, you know, anything moral, like just moral issues not in line with the Catholic worldview. There were several times where a client would bring it up and be like, I need you to help me with this. And it was really, really hard. I can remember a couple of times when, you know, the relationship unfortunately came to an end, and it was really difficult. I have had two television opportunities one television opportunity and then another major opportunity where I had to be honest about my faith and what that meant. So meaning that would allow me to do certain things, but it would also allow me to not participate in certain things. And it came to a point where I did have to kind of draw a line and say, hey, like, these are some of the parameters if we're going to work together. And they chose not to work with me. And they made it pretty explicit. The one that is still very painful for me, I mean, I'm over it, but like, it was a major television opportunity on a network y'all know and love. I don't want to name names just because I just don't feel like it's appropriate. But I had to make like, it was a moral decision. Like, I knew, and my spiritual director guided me through the whole thing. He was like, you can't agree to do that. You can't agree to put yourselves in certain situations that make you complicit to sin. Like, you just cannot. And so making my business, my brand, everything, it's like, it's kind of now just obvious. Yeah, she's not going to participate in things that could lead other people to sin, or where sin is maybe being, highlighted. Like, she's just not. So it makes for some greater, I guess, transparency and ease in navigating these kinds of things, because I'm making it very clear now. This is what I stand for. And there are certain things that don't fall in line with that. And then number 3, and this is a really important one, it just simply feels like this is what the Lord is asking of me. This is what he asked of me in early 2021. And this is what he's asking of me. And he continues to ask of me now. I remember a time when just going back to the authenticity and the moral stuff, I was asked to MC the March for Life in Canada. So similar to the March for Life in America that happens in the winter. This was a huge event where we gather on Parliament Hill, and pro-life leaders from all over the nation come together for this huge march. And they asked me and my husband to MC it. And we did. I was pregnant at the time. It was super cute. I had this cute little baby bump, and I'm up there on Parliament Hill. But I remember, and I'm ashamed of this. I did not put a stitch of it on social media. And I was like, I really hope people don't tag me, because I was still wrestling with that. I was wrestling with what it meant to be, just a person with a public presence, and what it meant to tell that story of my Catholicism. I don't feel that conflict anymore. I just don't, because I've chosen to just be like unabashedly Catholic. Now, does every business need to do this? Like, for a Catholic business owner to be successful, do they need to be very like blatant about their Catholic faith when they are, advertising themselves? No, absolutely not. And to run an authentic business, do you have to share your Catholic faith? No, I don't think so either. And it's interesting, Cent Ventures attracts a lot of these people. So I would say that Cent Ventures has a lot of members and participants in their conferences that run businesses that are authentically Catholic, or they are doing things that are Catholic, like they're in the work of evangelization, or they're creating videos to promote, marriage and family, or what have you. But there are a lot of business executives who attend Cent Ventures events, who run businesses that are, I'm just going to use the word agnostic, like meaning, that they as a founder perhaps are Catholic, maybe many members of the team are Catholic, but they're not necessarily leading with that in their marketing or their public storytelling. There's one particular woman, and forgive me, I don't remember her name or her company, but if I remember the details correctly, she the business was not anything to do, like, it was like HR, I want to say, something like that. Business was nothing to do with like specifically building the Catholic Church, as an example. But they had franchises, and they would have a franchise convention every year. And it was important to her and to her leadership team that they pray before. And that at one point they felt pressure because one of their franchises was like, we're not comfortable praying. But they stayed true to their values, and they just sort of made it invitational. If you would like to join us bow your heads. If you don't want to join us, that's okay too, right? So I'm just giving this as an example. Does the person who founds a business, do you need to be, unabashedly Catholic in the way that you market yourself and run your business? I mean, I would argue you do have to be Catholic in the way you run your business to be practice with integrity, but does it have to be present in your branding and your vision and your mission statement? No. However, if you are listening to this, pondering, perhaps I need to make my business unabashedly Catholic. Lisa, you've posed some things in me. I've already been feeling this way. I've been feeling this tug to just take my business and make it Catholic. Here are some things that I want you to consider, some invitations for you to consider. Number one, is this what the Lord is asking of you too? And that is where you have to begin. Nobody can tell you what to do here. I can give you some advice, and I'm going to share with you some things to think about that are very, very helpful. But in the end, you've got to really discern, Lord, is this what you want for me? Is this what you want of my unique life? And what I want to just sort of encourage and invite for discernment is it probably is. Like there is probably, if the Lord keeps tapping you on the shoulder, there's probably something there to pay attention to. And if you're further just intrigued and you would like a tool to help you do this, I want to invite you to something called, this is by Metanoia Catholic, the Unique Call to Sanctity Workshop. I have never actually led one of these online. I have done these as part of keynotes in groups that I'm invited to come into and speak at, but I've never actually led this workshop online. And so I've decided to do this next Wednesday, November 13th at 8 p.m. East. You're going to gather with me live for 90 minutes and walk through a workshop that was very helpful to me when I was navigating this. I'll never forget, I tell this story publicly. This was also really important to Stephanie Donahue. Stephanie Donahue, who I run the mastermind with, the Wealth Without Guilt Mastermind, she's a coach in that mastermind. She was one of my mastermind clients. I had her do Unique Call to Sanctity. And basically, this is what she's meant to do on paper. She is meant to lead Catholics in business. And so this workshop can be very helpful and clarifying to you if you have been wrestling with this or you're wrestling with another question around what it is you're supposed to do with your time on earth. I want to invite you to click the link below where you can book your ticket Wednesday, November 13th at 8 p.m. East. So number one is this what the Lord is asking of you? And just to really ask him that question, pray, discern, and take steps to kind of see, is this it? Number two, and I love this question, okay? So listen to this question. Will it make it easier for your customers to find you? So in a similar way, when I went to those original people, Crystal, Lydia, Beverly, so grateful, and others, and asked them that question, is this why you coached me? They all said yes. Branding yourself as Catholic and making that part of your story, making that part of your marketing might actually make it easier for people to find what they're looking for. Because especially in today's marketplace, I would say authenticity, like people need a lot of certainty now. They need a lot of certainty. They need to know that something's going to work. They need to know that there is money in the right spot. And so I would argue that being really honest, if the Lord has asked you to really lean into this part of your identity, I would argue that this will make it actually easier for similar people who have similar values to you, who are looking for somebody, who wish there was somebody with similar values, who don't want to do the mental gymnastics like I was doing in those business secular areas. They don't want to do the mental gymnastics. They just want to be led by somebody who they know have a similar worldview. So will it make it easier for your customers to find you? And then finally, are they already wanting or waiting for this? And that's what I want to just end with here, that my people, and I'll remember Amanda, I'm singling you out. Amanda sent me several messages as I was going through this transition. And she continues, Amanda, you know who you are. She continues to be a big cheerleader, and I'm very grateful. I remember she sent a message saying something like, I honestly have just been waiting for you to do this. She just was like, this is exactly what I've wanted. I've been waiting for you to just make the decision to do it. And my gut is there are people in your world who feel the exact same way. And they will even more enthusiastically scream your message from the rooftops because it's something that they were looking for and they want to share that with their friends. I thought that niching down to Catholic would actually hurt my bottom line. It actually did the opposite because I think in my particular audience, it was exactly what they were waiting for. It's what they wanted all along. So it actually just expedited people's ability to make a purchase decision with me. And I think too, it made it easier for them to talk about me. And so then it made it easier for other people to find me. And so these are just some important considerations that I do think are worth pondering. If you're having this nudge, if you felt this nudge to brand yourself unabashedly Catholic and incorporate elements, even like the vernacular, into your marketing and your messaging and your branding. I hope this was helpful. It was kind of nice to reminisce around this story because I went from a place of so much trepidation about being myself. I'm going to close with one final story. And it was about 2016 when this wrestle really started. Like, okay, do I leave this interior design kind of brand that I've built? And do I like lean in more to lifestyle? Can I share a little bit more of my faith? I remember the women I was with in this peer mastermind, they were all in the United States. They were all Christian women who were not afraid of sharing their faith online. They're a little bit older than me as well. So I think there's wisdom and maturity that comes there where you don't really care as much about what people think, I think, when you're a little bit older. But they like really encouraged me to just again be my authentic self. And they were just like, go write one blog post where you truly are a bit authentic. So you're not worried about being this professional interior designer. You're just sharing your heart a little bit. And I had found a quote. I believe it's John Acuff. Forgive me if I'm not quoting this correctly, but John Acuff. And it was something like, um, it was something around like, you have reached authenticity when you can be inside the forest of who you are and be happy to be there. You can be inside the forest of who you are and be happy to be there. And I remember in 2016 of this particular incident we're talking about, I was like so far on the outside. Like it's like I could see the trees ahead of me, but there was a good like 100 yards between me and the forest that was myself. Like it was not, it was scary to me to be that authentic. And then as I started doing this work, I remember describing it to friends, like my toes are now on the outside. I can like hear the waterfalls, like in the inside of the forest. I can hear the babbling water. I can like smell the pine trees, whatever, but I'm just on the outside. I remember telling a story. This was actually to Stephanie Weinert. I remember when I was living in Ave Maria and I was doing this jump to Catholic. I remember telling her, okay, I'm in the forest, but it's like really scary because I can only see a spotlight 3 feet ahead of me. Like it's really scary. Like, I don't know. I don't like it. And now I would say I am in the middle of the forest and I am, frolicking, just like frolicking and happy to be exactly like who I am. Do I struggle with self-confidence? Do I struggle with fear of failure? Do I struggle with many things? Do I whatever. I have I have a very dramatic mind. I think if you've been here long enough, my mind is a roller coaster of emotions. I'm very prone to doubt and spiraling. But the difference now than 2016, 2020, 2021, the difference now is I have a lot of tools on how to stop the spiral, but also tools to remind me of who I really am. And so I want to encourage you, if this is sort of intriguing or attractive to you, this unique Call to Sanctity workshop will give you a piece of paper. Literally, that's the goal of the workshop. It will give you a piece of paper that will help you see, I have a bit more clarity based on just data. Based on data, I have more clarity on where I think the Lord wants me to serve. And so if you're interested in that, go to the link right below wherever you are watching or listening to this. I hope and pray it is a workshop that will give you some clarity. And if you wanting to make your business more unabashedly Catholic, I hope you'll join me. All right, everybody, thank you so much for watching or listening. It is a joy to spend time with you. Reminder, go and support the Catholic businesses that you know and love, because I bet you a lot of them had these same fears, and they're hoping that, oh my gosh, like I don't lose business because I'm authentic to my faith. This is why I love supporting my fellow Catholics, my fellow Catholic moms, and building this Catholic economy. Have a great day, everybody, and we will see you next time.